right. This story begins when I was about 7 years old. I was part of a table tennis competition and was leading a game against an otherwise better player. I was number 3 in my state at my age and had the pressure to win. Just when I had won another huge point, the kid on the other end threw his racket across the table, scaring the living shit out of me. As a timid little guy who heard that the opponent should be eliminated for his action, I was amazed to see the game continue because his parents spoke to the referee. From there on out, I lost, point after point, eventually losing the game and being eliminated out of the competition. It was then, at a mere age of 7, with tears in my eyes, that I learned that no matter what, resilience is the key to success. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a great conference so far, and lunch hasn't made you too sleepy. My name is Arjit Singh, and I'm here to tell you about what resilience and purpose mean to me and how you can overcome obstacles through thinking in full circles. Thank you all for being here today, and I hope this presentation is valuable to you. Part of this presentation is from my conversation with a global cohort of young designers with a mission to create a better world, and the rest is from my experience working and living in various parts of the world, including the time I spent in rural Alabama. It's a story of things always coming full circle. It's about how I believe better thinking has led me to better outcomes. So here's my journey. It started in India with my interest in being an automotive designer. From there, I went to Auburn, Alabama to get a bachelor's in industrial design, where I was the only Indian student in the 4-year program. I then worked in the USA as a designer before I had to move back home and leave my immigrant American journey behind due to COVID-19 and visas. And during my time in Alabama, here are some things that I heard. Why are you comparing time on 2 watches? Are you going to blow up this building? And this, if he was the pilot of my plane, I'd have to abort the mission. And after witnessing this by my side, another white individual then gave me this name, Too Arjit to Quit. Now, it's my motto and one I try to live by every day. It's also my website, my social channels, and my email, if you ever want to find me. And here's something that I truly believe. Sustenance is something different for everybody. Skipping to about a few months ago, I learned a huge lesson. After splitting from a long relationship and incorrectly feeling I had lost all my friends, I learned that even though we're all on our own individual journeys, we're social beings. And being social beings comes with a price of wanting to be loved and accepted into a community. Whether that means supporting the same sports team, singing the same songs, or owning the same pair of shoes like everybody else on social media. And on the other side of this, we're all different in one way or another. We all have our own unique stories. What works for us or is best for us may not be best for someone else. Our languages help define us and introduce us in words. Our unique bodies, our hairstyles, and the way we choose to dress up help us define and introduce ourselves in pictures. We can't live on just the needs and averages. Just because the average calorie consumption for females is 1,600 to keep the same weight and 2,000 for males doesn't mean that's what people are going to consume. Accessibility to things, our difference in privilege, our wants and desires, and our individual journeys come into play. Which makes me say this: capitalism is here to stay, because nature, emotions, and social beings are here to stay. So what do designers do when we first think about creating a small business? Well, we create posters, stickers, and t-shirts. Things with a brand or an in-fashion phrase. Things that others in the community can relate to. But what if 1 or 100 or even 1,000 designers didn't do that? They didn't create a brand. Would that change anything? And here's something that I see a lot of young designers say. I want to solve products that solve problems and help make the world a better place. Now, what if 1,000 designers didn't have this in their portfolios? I think I'd start to get a bit worried about the profession. So here's a picture of me asking Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, and famous podcaster about how to create something meaningful. And here's what I learned. It's not just about the importance and time graph. It's also about focusing on the importance and satisfaction graph. And that if we can align on brands, bands, and emotions, and phrases, we should be able to align on goals. After all, there's many years of research showing that the why is the most important performance enhancer of any company. So let me ask you this. What's your ikigai? What do you want to be known for? Does what you're doing currently align with your passion and your mission? Do you just want to be a person that worked on, well, another marketing campaign that generated millions of dollars in return on investment? And this, what's your business's ikigai? Can your employees answer that? And here's another way to think about this. What would happen to the world if your company suddenly disappears? Would someone try to recreate what you have just because the world needs it? Or will it disappear only to be never missed again? This is easier seen in the case of the military, where the goal is pretty simple. Protect your own. So I ask you this. We know that AI can do a lot of the work, right? If I didn't talk about AI, would all my startup founders even be listening? So let's go back to this for a second. Having moved back to India after a long time, I learned about my privileges. I learned that I needed to be aware of them moving forward. And living in India, once again, I learned that growing countries are living a life on survival mode. For many, there's no talk of invention or innovation. There's only talk about where the next meal is going to come from. People don't move with the speed of technology, which moves exponentially. I'm sure you've heard of planned obsolescence, but have you also heard of companies waiting for people to be ready for technology? Touchscreens were first ready in 1965, but it wasn't until the first iPhone in 2007 that they became mainstream technology. Over 75% of people are concerned about artificial intelligence causing job loss. And this data is but a sample from a small group of folks who are involved in and around the world of AI. The fact is that much of the world still has no idea what AI is or what it can do. They will not care, not for many years, yet life will go on. So here's an interesting thing I found. Each interaction with ChatGPT is equal to 2.9 watt-hours of energy, which is equivalent to energy required to boil 2 tablespoons of water, which is also equivalent to 10x the energy of a standard Google search. And if Google's current search engine was replaced by LLMs, that would mean 8.9 watt-hours of energy for each search request. Considering Google's 9 billion search requests per day, that's equal to 29.2 terawatt-hours of annual energy use, which is also equal to the annual energy consumption of the country of Ireland. I'm not saying we need to stop doing this type of work. Of course, it's important to move our world forward. What I am saying is that it's important to think about how we want to spend our time and fix the real problems. The question is, if we think about solving for making our microchips more efficient, who'll work to help the shopkeeper get a better quality of life? And what near-futurist and designer Sanjeev Sirpal speaks about is climbing the clarity peak and getting to the top. He says that we need to reach the top of the peak to really have a clear line of sight before we start the descent of productivity. We need to slow down and think about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And after realizing that a piece of my dream of making a change was back in North America, to try my luck again, I then moved back to Canada, where I've now been designing for the last few years. And what I like about being a young designer is that I know there's a sandbox for what works, but I know that I can step out of it. I have to see it from a distance for reflection and ask myself if the work that I'm doing truly makes a difference. I like that I'm able to see and learn from people that have created these sandboxes over time, having learned the corporate language. But I also like that I'm able to teach first semester students at George Brown College and see their eyes light up when they talk about solving the real problems of the world. Which brings me to this. Earlier this year, we took on the challenge of creating a Hippocratic oath for design. And here's what that means. Redefining the way that we as designers and non-designers interact with and evaluate design. And through all this, we had one goal, the goal that we must design for a better world. And since we're talking about designing for a better world, we had to really consider what design is, what it is, how it's done, who gets to do it, where, how, and most importantly, why. What is a well-designed assault rifle? That's one of the questions we asked ourselves. What about everything else we design and its impact? Of course, these are hard-hitting questions because we're essentially questioning ethics. So then we asked, what is design? And what we came up with is design is the process of creation, implementation, and communication of a strategy that helps achieve a specific goal. And so then we asked, okay, what is good design? And we took that a step further in saying, good design has a purpose in problem solving, but is all the way to collaboration and communication. What we realized is an oath for design is an oath for a better designed world. We believe that an outcome that we're creating is probably something tangible and valuable for designers across the globe. Perhaps something like this, where you plot a radar graph against the principles of good design and see how your product fares up. We have to move from business metrics to human metrics, to focus on users' problems, if not besides, or before, if not besides sales targets. For example, Infotech's goal is to provide 3x member value. So here's what I say. Let's encourage our leaders to move from add to cart rate and customer lifetime value and return on investment to also incorporate personal satisfaction index, customer satisfaction, and happiness quotient. So we're back to the circle. And it's an important piece of the story. My philosophy is that because everything always comes full circle, that means there are 360 different directions we can go at any given time. Finding the one direction, or your ikigai, or your business's ikigai, is really essential to being truly happy and successful. Okay, if you thought there's no way this guy thought about all that resilience stuff when he was 7 years old, you're right. I probably didn't. But I did realize it many years later. I learned that to succeed, I needed to be competitive and be resilient till the job was done, not until someone or something caused a wrench in it. I might have lost the match the other day, but I learned a valuable lesson about resilience and not being afraid to call out what is right. Yet fighting doesn't always have to mean responding in the moment. And here's what I mean by that. Remember this guy who said, why are you comparing time on 2 watches? Are you going to blow up this building? That's a man who also later went on to give me a call when he had a lead for a job. And remember this guy who said if he was the pilot of my plane, I'd have to abort the mission? That's a man who later went on to buy me a bike when my old one got damaged. Changing the world might be impossible, but changing your world isn't. I know the way that you see your world cannot be changed. We can all work on changing our world. If you had to evaluate your product or your design against the principles of good design, how would it fare up? And through all this, I learned that better thinking leads to better outcomes, because better thinking leads to us making decisions without fear and without hate. Nirbhav, nirvair. I could have responded to the Alabamian men in the moment through hate and anger. But then I probably wouldn't have heard the lead for the job or gotten the new bike as a gesture of kindness. Better products and actually solved problems lead to brand loyalty and long-term sustenance of business. It always comes full circle. Thank you.